I'm Nancy Sofin, a member of Lexington's Tree Committee. The aim of this amendment to the tree bylaw is twofold: to facilitate effective and efficient administration of the hazard tree exemption to the bylaw, and to exempt from the bylaw invasive trees that pose a threat that clearly warrants their eradication from the landscape. This motion amends Tree Bylaw Section 120-9, which describes exemptions to the tree bylaw. You may recall that the tree bylaw applies to properties undergoing demolition or major construction, which could be new construction or the increase of a building's footprint by 50% or more. It only applies to the setbacks shown here shaded in red, which are the lot's borders 30 feet wide in front and 15 feet wide in the sides and rear, where building is not allowed. The bylaw does not apply to the area in white, the buildable interior of the lot. And it defines protected trees as those trees 6 inches diameter or larger in the setback. When a protected tree is removed, the applicant pays a permit fee and also must mitigate by planting new trees or paying a fee in lieu of replanting to the town's tree fund. Protected trees that remain in the setbacks must be physically protected from damage. And our bylaw exempts from any fees or mitigation those protected trees that are considered hazardous as declared in writing by the tree warden. For a tree to be hazardous, it must satisfy 3 conditions. The tree has some structural defect, for example, a crack, some rot, a lot of deadwood, or it may be leaning precariously, that's likely to cause all or part of the tree to fail. Second, there must be a target, property or people, that would be damaged when the tree fails. And third, that risk can't be removed by tree care, such as pruning. This sounds straightforward, so what needs to be fixed? Our bylaw currently does not specify what degree of hazard warrants exemption from the bylaw, and we've seen some variability in what's been exempted. Also, this is a time-consuming task for the tree warden. We've also seen cases where the applicant claimed that trees removed before the tree warden's initial site inspection took place were hazardous. We'd like to ease the burden on town staff time, eliminate verbal reporting, and set clear standards to create an efficient, uniform implementation of this exemption. This motion does not change the tree warden's responsibility or authority to decide which public trees should be removed based on their hazard status. For trees in the setbacks of private property undergoing construction, it adopts the same process as is used successfully in Cambridge. A builder who thinks a tree should be exempt because it's hazardous would hire an arborist to examine the tree and fill out the International Society of Arborists Basic Tree Risk Assessment form to determine if the tree is at low, moderate, high, or extreme overall risk. If the determination is that it's at high or extreme risk and pruning or other actions cannot correct the defect, the tree is exempt. Only if declared hazardous by this process may a tree then be removed without any fees or mitigation. The use of the ISA form provides clear parameters for the arborist, and the tree warden no longer makes a site visit to examine the tree. He needs only to check that the paperwork was submitted. I've spoken with an arborist who has done over 20 such assessments in Cambridge, and he reports that the process is straightforward and not onerous or particularly expensive. While it may at times be prudent to remove a tree that presents a lesser risk, and that is always allowed, the standard of high or extreme overall risk for exemption from mitigation places Lexington in the mainstream of other communities. Arlington and Concord exempt from mitigation trees that are immediately hazardous. Wellesley does not exempt any hazard tree from their bylaws mitigation requirements, and we would align with Cambridge. An invasive species is an introduced species to an environment that becomes overpopulated and harms its new environment. The Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources publishes a prohibited plant list. Any plant on this list is banned from sale, purchase, or import in the state. In 2010, the exemption for invasive tree species was removed from the bylaw. That a tree can't be sold or planted doesn't necessarily mean that every tree of that species should be cut down. Some can be managed in the landscape and under the right conditions may contribute positively to our quality of life. So we are not proposing that all invasive trees on the mass prohibited plant list be exempt from the bylaw. The motivation for taking a second look at exempting some invasive trees from the bylaw is one particularly noxious invasive tree, Ailanthus altissima, commonly known as tree of heaven. We encourage all property owners to make every effort to eradicate this tree. In addition to its rapid growth, aggressive spread by seed and root suckers, unpleasant odor, and chemicals emitted that inhibit the growth of other plants, Ailanthus is the favored host of the invasive insect, the spotted lanternfly, a destructive agricultural and landscape pest. Spotted lanternfly has not yet been found in Lexington, but has been seen as close as Waltham, Sudbury, and Cambridge. The insect is drawn to Tree of Heaven, and there is evidence that eradicating Ailanthus discourages or slows the spread of spotted lanternfly. This motion restores the exemption for certain invasive tree species, as specified in regulations prepared by the Tree Committee and DPW and approved by the Select Board. Keeping that list of exempt trees in the regulations allows some flexibility to respond to new information, such as updates to the state prohibited plant list. There are invasives other than Ailanthus on the mass prohibited plant list that we may want to include in regulations. But at this time, the Tree Committee and DPW do not intend to exempt Norway maple or black locust, which make up a significant fraction of our tree canopy, because that canopy is important to fight climate change. In summary, the motion for Article 36 creates a uniform, efficient process for exempting hazardous trees that requires a certified arborist hired by the applicant to find a tree at high or extreme risk according to the standards of the International Society of Arborists. And it restores the exemption for certain invasive trees, specifically including Ailanthus altissima. Thank you for your consideration of this motion.